So let's start with the quarterback position here. Talk about Jordan Love going against the Chargers defense that ranks 30th against opposing quarterbacks. So Love is coming off his best fantasy outing since week 4 this season. He threw for 289 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. The Chargers are a defense that I've targeted all season long as they just simply can't stop anyone. Love may not be the sexiest pick of the week, but against this defense, you can easily pull off a Love play. So if you're in need of a quarterback this week, Love could be your guy. Next quarterback we're talking about here is Jared Goff, taking on that Bears defense that ranks 28th against opposing quarterbacks. Goff gets to take on a Bears defense who hasn't really fared too well against opposing quarterbacks as of late. So Goff also gets to play at home where he's averaging more than 20 fantasy points per game. The Bears defense has also allowed the second most passing touchdowns this season. Just due to the Bears' strong run defense and poor pass defense, the Lions should have to depend on Goff's throwing ability just to get that win here. So I see Goff with a big game. Last quarterback we're talking about here is Brock Purdy, taking on that Bucs defense that ranks 26th against opposing quarterbacks. Now that Deebo Samuel is back for the 49ers, we did see Purdy just back to his old self last week. We see Purdy consistently throwing up 20 plus fantasy points, and this week against the Bucs defense, who has been just letting quarterbacks show out lately, Purdy really should be one to watch. The Bucs may rank 26th this season against opposing quarterbacks, but they rank dead last since week 6. So Purdy is an amazing play this week. Let's move over to the running back position. First running back I'm going to talk about here is Ty Chandler, taking on that Broncos defense that ranks dead last against opposing running backs. Now, to be fair, the Broncos have played rather well against the running backs as of late, but if Alexander Mattison ends up missing the game, we could easily see 15 to 20 carries, and that just sheer amount of opportunity here just makes Chandler a very good play. With confidence that the Broncos revert back to suckness, get Chandler in your lineups. And a caveat to that is make sure you're looking at Alexander Mattison's injury status prior to the game to make sure he is out, because if Alexander Mattison does play, I would not recommend Ty Chandler. Next running back we're talking about here is Brian Robinson Jr., taking on that Giants defense ranks 29th against opposing running backs. I mean, let's just face it, the Giants are bad, real bad. So here comes a running back that can hurt you, running or receiving. Last week Robinson had 6 receptions for 119 yards and a touchdown. So against the Giants, who is very beat up right now, I wouldn't really bat an eye if I saw him run for 100 rushing and 100 receiving. So if the Commanders are able to build the lead, then that should be not that hard to do. They will need to use the ground and pound method just to chew up the clock to get the win. So that's where Robinson Jr. comes in. He should be a great play this week. Last running back I'm going to talk about here is Darrell Henderson, taking on that Seahawks defense that ranks 27th against opposing running backs. I'm going to start here by saying that I am and by no means just excited for this play, because the odds of Henderson giving you a great game is the same odds as you falling out of an airplane, getting caught midair by a great white, pooped out, digested by plankton, just to be reincarnated as a squirrel. So the one thing that he has going for him here is a matchup against the Seahawks, who has given up the 5th most rushing touchdowns this season. If you need a long shot and have a strong stomach, just put in Henderson in your lineup. He could do something for you this week that could shock some people. So let's move over here to the wide receiver position. Talk about Tank Dell versus this Cardinals defense that ranks 19th against opposing wide receivers. What I can say about this Texans pass defense is just that they have been amazing as of late. CJ Stroud and this offense is really starting to become a must-see TV type of offense. So Dell, saw a team high 14 targets with Nico Collins missing in action last week and was able to take the reins on this offense. So it seems as if Dell and Stroud are really starting to make a nice 1-2 punch combo. Dell is a must-start pretty much every single week. The next wide receiver I'm going to talk about here is this teammate Noah Brown, taking on that Cardinals defense that ranks 19th against opposing wide receivers, the same as Tank Dell. So staying here with the same offense, I just had to put these 2 wide receivers on the list. If Nico Collins plays, I'd have Collins over Brown, but with Brown having back-to-back 150 plus passing yard receiving games, it's hard not to put him in here. Brown was in my video last week as well, and I'm very much just wanting to dip my toes back into that water and recommend him to y'all again this week. The Texans are just way too fun to watch. Even if Collins plays, I'm starting Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Noah Brown. Get all these guys in your lineup. I think all of them will have a nice game. Next, last wide receiver I'm going to talk about here is Christian Kirk, taking on that Titans defense that ranks 26th against opposing wide receivers. Kirk had a team high 11 targets last week, and he's almost reclaiming his #1 wide receiver role in this offense. The season started hot for Calvin Ridley, but since kind of really sizzled out for him, and now you see Christian Kirk just showing out consistently. I'm not sure if Lawrence just trusts Kirk more, but either way, against this Titans defense, I can see Kirk eclipsing that 100-yard mark yet again. Moving on here to the tight end spot, we're going with Okonkwo going against that Jaguars defense that ranks 30th against opposing tight ends. Okonkwo is finally seeing the targets that I like seeing, but I just want to see him catch most of those targets. If he can start completing these opportunities, then we may be able to see some type of production that everybody was predicting prior to the season. Okonkwo should be a good play this week against the Jaguars defense. Get him in your lineups, okay? I think you'll be happy that you did. Next tight end we're talking about here is Dalton Kincaid going on that Jets defense that ranks 26th against opposing tight ends. Kincaid is becoming a dominant fantasy tight end. I mean, he scored 15 plus fantasy points in each of his last 4 games. The Jets is a great matchup for Kincaid. So the Jets have struggled against the tight end position all season long, and he's allowed the most touchdowns to opposing tight ends. You put 1 and 1 together, it's going to equal 2. Kincaid is a smash play this week. Last tight end we're talking about here is Jake Ferguson taking on that Panthers defense that ranks 8th against opposing tight ends. I just had to put Ferguson on my list here. Ferguson has scored a touchdown in his last 3 games, and even though the Panthers defense has been pretty solid against the tight end position, the Cowboys offense is clicking on all cylinders. So, there's a decent shot that Ferguson could be looking at his 4th touchdown in the last 4 games. Ferguson is a good play this week. Now on to the Bengal Tiger start of the week. The Bengal Tiger start of the week is tight end Trey McBride. McBride is an absolute monster for fantasy football right now. I mean, he is being hyper targeted by whatever quarterback is playing at this point for the Cardinals. Because the Cardinals are so bad, it's just forcing them to throw the ball a lot. And it just so happens that McBride is the happy recipient of this. So if this keeps up, he's going to be in a tier with Kelsey and Andrews before you know it. McBride is easily the Bengal Tiger start of the week.